The special session now in session. Joining us for perspective on the week that was and the week ahead, Jay Root from the Texas Tribune and Bob Garrett with the Dallas Morning News. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we got the special session going on right now. 4 days down. How's it looking so far, Bob?
It's not looking very harmonious, Josh. You know, the lieutenant governor is really scorching, setting land speed records and moving bills out of the Senate, and then he's also setting sort of new records, I think, for criticizing a speaker in public and saying the House isn't doing anything. And Joe Straus is over there placid as a rock, not really giving up his game plan, but obviously not all that thrilled about any of this. So hard to believe the House is going to pass a whole lot of this stuff.
You wrote about Joe Straus this past week. I know that he's been a little more vocal than he has in last sessions as Speaker.
That's right. I think this back and forth or pounding with, from Patton has finally made Straus more outspoken, especially on the bathroom bill. You know, he was quoted in the New Yorker magazine as saying that he had rejected a Senate emissary with a Patrick proposal late in the regular session and said he didn't want a suicide on his conscience, speaking of transgender Texans. So that was, for Joe Straus, that was really pretty outspoken.
How can something like that coming from a Republican, even though he's a moderate Republican, how can that hurt him in the future? I mean, some people are already kind of talking about not only just the election coming up, but if he could even lose his speakership.
Well, he could. I mean, you definitely have his flock wants some conservative stuff they can take back to their elections and stand for election on. So he's got to, I think he has to give them something, but he really has drawn a line in the sand on the bathroom bill. So I really don't see that coming out of this session. You know, property tax cut or something related to school finance, I think, you know, he's got to give them something. He is in sort of a precarious position when you think about it, because his members do stand in primary elections and their grassroots are upset. You see these resolutions coming out criticizing him. I just got a new one in my inbox. So it's going to be an interesting special session, I think.
Yeah, school finance seems to be something that a lot of people have really been waiting a long time for.
But I think you're going to have the House focusing on that. They're sort of inhabiting completely different worlds. I mean, you know, as we're talking right now, there's all kinds of committee hearings going on. We had the specter of the Senate meeting at 12:01 in order to just take the first possible minute that they could to pass things. So
That's
they're
AM, not PM.
Right, exactly, exactly.
With
I
pizza
actually,
and pop, right?
right.
Soda pop.
Yeah.
So, you know, try to send the signal they're doing all this work while the House is sort of sitting on their hands. In the House, they don't really care so much about that, I think. And but you know, they're going to be talking about the things they want to talk about, and that's the thing that Abbott called this special. Greg Abbott, the governor, called this special session. But he's left his fate into the hands of people who can't stand to be in the same room with each other and who have completely different visions about what they want to do. But you also have to recognize that Joe Straus is not elected by the statewide voters in the way that Abbott and Patrick are. He's elected by his fellow members. So he has a completely different constituency to deal with.
I understand that Governor Abbott has made buttons, right, that say, what does it say?
20 for 20.
Right. Is he going to get 20?
It's not a free throw shooting contest. But
is he going to get all 20 through in one special session?
Through the Senate. But how many will go all the way? I mean, there's, you know, I think a lot of people who've been watching this don't think that many. I think Jay mentioning school finance, they really are in some ways uncertain of this stuff down in the weeds. They actually, the House and Senate are both working on some of the same things. The problem is you have the Senate wanting a voucher light thing for disabled students. The House doesn't really want that. So can they just get to what the things they agree on? And you know, just the atmospherics are so bad, I don't know whether they can.
Jay, you mentioned that you've seen the crowds out there at the Capitol already. I know that they're ramping up to see what's going to happen. But when you have a shorter amount of time to get through legislation or fight legislation like this, I mean, is it kind of a more emotional time than it would be during a regular session?
Special sessions are strange and they can be unpredictable. I mean, one thing that's unpredictable that happened is that the Democrats actually delayed this a little bit. Lieutenant Governor Patrick, who presides over the Senate, was briefing Republican senators saying that there weren't going to be any of this kind of thing, and so they've gummed it up a little bit. But you know, it's much shorter time frame, and so they're trying to cram a lot in. So yeah, you are going to see a lot of emotion in coming days.
What's the deal with this list that the governor says he has about lawmakers?
He's taking notes, keeping a list of who's naughty and nice. You know, in the House, there's another dynamic that's interesting, Jay, and that is that the moderate Republicans around Strauss are kind of telling the Democrats, don't go to Ardmore, Albuquerque, or New Orleans, or we'll pass all of Abbott's 20, because they don't want to have that embarrassment and go into a primary. So they're, you know, Patrick has started to have a little trouble from the Democrats. The Democrats in the House have viewed the Democrats in the Senate as too, you know, quiescent, there's a good word for you, lying down too much for Patrick and the Republicans. But so there's a lot of things going on here, both among Democrats and Republicans.
But what happens if you're on that list, the naughty list?
Well, I don't know that Greg Abbott is going to spend any money or do that much to try to take out an incumbent Republican in a primary. That would really complicate his 2019 session in a big way.
I think his 2019 session could be complicated anyway, because there are a lot of hard feelings in the House about this list. You know, he's going to have some list, and if you don't stick up for what he wants you to stick up for, he's going to come campaign against you. But there's already hard feelings as well about last election, when Greg Abbott was supposed to go out and help people that voted for him on his education priorities, and that never happened. So the relationship between House Republicans and the governor's office are not at a good point.
Now, real quick before we go, I know we started this past week talking about a topic that's near and dear to your heart since you've covered the border so much. I know that back earlier in January, Republican lawmakers were really calling on the federal government to step up and pay the price tag for what Texas is paying on the border. Well, the Fed stepped in and said they'll pay for a little bit of the National Guard, but it seems like people are really banking on that, but it's not really that much, right?
Well, we got this press release, and it made it seem like, oh, finally the federal government, you know, now led by a Republican, is going to come in and take care of Texas, which is spending almost $1 billion over 2 years, and this is the second time they're doing this, so we're looking at almost $2 billion. If they were going to pay for that, it ends up being like a drop in the bucket. It's a tiny amount of money. I think it was 0.5% or less of what the state of Texas taxpayers are spending on border security.
And it only goes till the end of the fiscal year, so just a couple of months, right? Thank you both for being with us, and I hope you have fun with the rest of the special session.
I do too.
All right, repairing the Democratic Party. It's a tall order. Just ahead, the man whose job it is to start winning elections. DNC Chair Tom Perez on the party's future in Texas.